Hey everybody, welcome back to the annual High Point ranking video. Once again, I'm a little late with this video, but still got to get it done. A little bit of review for last year in general. It was a great year for me personally for the High Points that I went to. A lot of trips, a lot more trips I feel like that I took specifically for the High Points. Doing this goal has opened me up to so many areas of the country that I never thought I would see, or that didn't even cross my mind beforehand. So I'm just touching on that a little bit. This is so fun to do, and I know I'm kind of like speedrunning these. A lot of people do this over their life, but right now, I'm young, I'm into it. I want to get as many done as I can, you know, while I'm able. So, going into it, we did 13 high points last year, which is one more than the previous year. I can pretty much guarantee that that'll be the most we do in a single year ever, unless I decide to do some repeats down the road. But we currently sit at the halfway point, 25 done and 25 to go. That is phenomenal for only 2 years into this. The 13 we did here were great. Some were better than others, some were really good, and some may have taken the top spot on the list even compared to last year. Quick side note, originally when I planned on doing these yearly videos ranking the high points, I was just going to take the high points that I did that year and add them to the list of the previous year and rank them all together. But I feel like that would kind of get repetitive if I just did them every year with each high point that I added, especially due to the fact that from here on out, most of these years I won't hit as nearly as many, so there won't be that much change in the list. So what I decided to do is last year's list is going to stay where it is, 1 through 12. And I'm going to do a different list this year, just ranking these 13. And then next year, I'll rank the ones that I did this year. At the end of this goal, when I have all 50 of these done, that is when I will do a gigantic list ranking all 50 of these. I feel like this is the better option. Otherwise, these videos will get kind of repetitive, you know, if you go on a binging spree years from now. So I feel like this take is a little bit more refreshing. So with all that being said, let's jump into the list. At the low spot, number 13 is going to be JERIMOTH Hill in Rhode Island. This is probably the only one that was just kind of you know? It wasn't bad. It was still a walk in the woods, and it was still better than Delaware. I mean, this is just off the side of the road. Not even a 5-minute little walk into the woods, and it's kind of dirty. There's a lot of trash at this high point. There's like old chairs, and there's like a little abandoned shed, and there's actually not a marker on the high point itself, but you just kind of know where it is because I've seen like pictures and stuff. That's kind of why I would describe it as eh. It was the first one of the trip that we did to go do more high points, and I think it served its purpose perfectly as the first spot because they only got better from there. But when you compare this one to everything that I did last year, it was definitely the weakest one, and so that's why it sits at number 13. Number 12 is going to be Mount ARVON in Michigan. This one I kind of have personal beef with. This high point itself is not bad by any means. It's actually a really cool spot, but getting to it is a challenge in and of itself. That's partly on me with choosing kind of a poor time of the year to go hit this high point. Zach and I got stopped like 2 miles down the road because of the snow. We couldn't get past it. So we had to hike up 2 miles in the snow, which is something that I had not planned to do because I didn't account for there still being snow on the mountain. There was snow like a week and a week and a half beforehand, but I had figured it was above freezing temperatures and everything. I had figured the snow would have melted off the mountain, you know, long before then. But of course it didn't, and that added a challenge, and that kind of just took away from the fun because hiking in the snow with just our regular, pretty much tennis shoes, just water seeping in, and it just wasn't that fun. I'm glad I did it. And the road to get to it was kind of sketchy. You know, you go way out in the boonies to get to this thing. And, which is the case for a lot of high points, a lot of the bigger ones in the future. But I feel like the rewards for those make it worth it. The reward for Mount ARVON was not worth it. It was a cool spot on top of this little mountain in the woods. and you got to see a pretty good viewpoint with a lake, with the shoreline. As far as I know, this is probably the only high point where you can see a lake shoreline from its summit. Well, actually, that's not true. We'll get to the next one in a little bit that could also probably see shoreline. That's kind of why it sits at number 12. It's just a personal thing. When I look at these high points, I kind of grade them on how much fun I had doing them, and I did not have a lot of fun doing this one. It's still a cool place to go, and I'm still glad I went, but like I said in my video, I really hope I don't have to ever go back there, because it was okay, I did it, let's move on. So, number 12 is Mount ARVON in Michigan. Number 11 is Woodall Mountain in Mississippi. I believe this is the 4th lowest high point of the 50, but for that low spot, it was really cool. I actually really enjoyed this one. It was the first one I did last year, and on a little trip to get the last 3 in the southeast that I needed, and I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it's like 800 feet or something like that, and you could still see a pretty good amount. I mean, maybe that's just because Mississippi is so flat, but I was pleasantly surprised. I actually really enjoyed it. A lot of cool stuff on top of it. The big boulder in the middle showing the highest point, and it had a cool plaque on the boulder, and it was just fun. Not that bad of a road to get up there. Actually enjoyed this one for what it was. I mean, it's nothing that great, you know. It's just a small little drive up a mountain and then you just hang out for a few minutes, but still cool to go to the highest point of Mississippi, so that's why it sits at number 11. At number 10, its next door neighbor, CHEAHA Mountain in Alabama. Pretty cool place. As for the high point itself, you really can't see that much except for like up in the tower, and the little tower they made is kind of, you know, it's just okay. I'm not really expecting that much when I go to these things though, so it didn't really let me down or anything. One cool thing about this high point is that it was all Bigfoot themed. Like there was a bunch of, it had a huge 15-foot tall wooden carving of Bigfoot, which was really cool. And the whole theme was like, there was like the Sasquatch trail, and it's like, you know, the common hiking thing of leave no trace. They kind of incorporated that in saying like, oh, Bigfoot doesn't leave anything behind, so you shouldn't either, which is true. So, it won a lot of points with me. I really liked it for what it was. Again, it's just like an okay high point. It was a lot, you can see a lot more. It was a lot higher than Mississippi, that's for sure. You know, there was still some stuff up there that was kind of, okay. There's like these radio tower equipment stuff right there, you know, stuff that takes away from the whole, you getting out and enjoying this place, but then you see this industrial stuff and it kind of takes you out of it a little bit, but not that bad. Overall, still really enjoyed this high point for what it was. So at number 10, CHEAHA Mountain in Alabama. At number 9 is Mount GREYLOCK in Massachusetts. This one I would compare a lot to High Point in New Jersey because it has a giant monument on the top of it that you can climb. We didn't get to climb New Jersey's, but we did climb Mount GREYLOCK's. And it was a war memorial dedicated to the veterans, present and past, which is always really cool. This is kind of the midpoint of our northeastern high point trip. It's really cool. It was the second high point we did in the day, so we were still a little exhausted from the first one, but since this was pretty much a walk up, it was nice and enjoyable. It was just a chill. We hung out for about an hour, climbed the thing, and they have a cool cabin there that you can stay in, like a lodge. I think that's pretty cool when they offer services like that, similar to Mount Magazine in Arkansas. But this was still cool. You could see, I think it said you could see 5 states from the top of the tower there, which is really cool. It might be the only high point where you can see 5 states. I don't know, just thinking that off the top of my head. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. But still cool. You can see really far. You can see mountains off in the distance. And just an overall enjoyable experience. Had some people there. Not too bad though. Nothing compared to what Clingman's Dome was, that's for sure. I hopefully that never gets that bad ever again. But that's why it sits at number 9, Mount GREYLOCK from Massachusetts. Number 8 will be Hawkeye Point in Iowa. This one was actually one of the ones I was most looking forward to doing. And it's just because it's a spot that embraced their status as a high point so much. The 50 signs pointing to all the other spots were so cool. The time and effort that these people went and put into this is really incredible. And they also embraced their kind of culture there, Iowa being very farm-driven. So there's a lot of old tractor equipment and stuff. There's a barn there with some of the history of the area. And sure, we went at a time of the year. I've seen pictures of this place when it's surrounded by its corn stalks, and it looks a lot cooler. And we went kind of in once winter was coming, and the farmer had already cut off all the corn stalks, so it was pretty dead around it. But I still really enjoyed this place for what it was. It was the first one of the northern trip that I did with Zach, who was a newcomer to the High Point series. We had a lot of newcomers this year, which was fun. It was just really fun. I mean, I can't really find anything that negative to say about it. You kind of know what you're getting into here. I mean, it didn't have any views, but it's Iowa. You know what I mean? Like, no one's expecting to see any views in Iowa. So it didn't have that, so it made do with what it had, and I love that. So that's why it sits at number 8, Hawkeye Point in the state of Iowa. Number 7 will be Mount Washington in New Hampshire. Maybe the most famous high point on the list of high points. The only other one I could think that might be more famous than Washington would probably be Rainier. But Mount Washington is a place that I knew about before I got into high pointing because of the world record wind speed thing, which the story behind that is just fascinating. They had a little museum up there to kind of walk you through how that process went. All of the videos I've seen of people going up there all experience kind of big winds, you know, trouble to get their car doors to open and everything. So I was kind of excited to get up there to high winds, and there wasn't even a breeze. There was no wind. I was blown away. I figured for sure we were going to get some wind. It was even cloudy, like storm related. I think it had rained that morning, but no wind. I was shocked. I wasn't upset, but I was like, I was a little bummed, I guess. So great views. Beautiful views. A beautiful area too. The White Mountains in New Hampshire. I mean, oh my God, it's an absolutely beautiful area. Salt and I loved it. Now the reason it's not higher up on the list is because, once again, this place was a tourist trap. There was a lot of people up there. First time to wait in line to take a picture at a summit marker. It took like 15, maybe 20 minutes to wait in line to take a picture at the summit. Which normally I don't wait in line for stuff like that, but in order for it to count, I had to stand on the highest point. Thus, probably wouldn't have counted. But that's why Mount Washington sits comfortable at number 7, the highest point in New Hampshire. Number 6 will be Timms Hill, Wisconsin. This one was a lot of fun. I feel like the time of the year that we did this was like a week, maybe 2 weeks too late to hit the perfect fall color part for the year, but it was still a lot of fun. I really liked the little tower they have on top of this. The actual high point itself, the area is super cool. I love it sits on that lake, and across the lake was this like breakfast lodge, which was delicious. They had the biggest pancakes I've ever seen in my life. Great food, great experience overall. The high point of Wisconsin was just really fun. This is just the best word to describe it. It was fun. You know, not much of a hike, you know, just a little trail up the hill a little bit. A lot of leaves, you know, with being the end of fall, and it was pretty cold. So cold that it drained my battery and one of my batteries in my cameras. But overall, had a great time. I can see maybe going back to this one. It was in a pretty cool area too. Just the hilly part of Wisconsin. Like, it's just really, really fun. That's just the best way I can describe Timms Hill. So that's why it sits at number 6. Number 5 will be TAUM SAUK Mountain in Missouri. I'm going to go ahead and say that this one would probably be lower down the list if it wasn't for how much fun we actually had. And I might be cheating a little bit here because the high point itself is not really what made this experience fun. It was before the high point and what we did after the high point. Number 1, I did it with 2 of my best friends, Selden and Pedro, which are like my go-to bros, and we just had a blast. Walking into that bathroom that smelled so bad only added to the experience. And to this day, it makes us laugh every time we talk about it. But that hike to that waterfall after we did the high point was gorgeous. It was still dead in the woods there in Missouri, but man, we just had so much fun doing it. It was a blast doing this high point. The high point itself, I love the little area that they have. It's this rock in the middle with, you know, with the plaque and everything. The reason it's at number 5 is just because it may not be that high for everybody else, but my personal experience there, I had a blast. And it was largely due to the company that I kept with me there, and another part was the hike after the high point, which might be bending the rules a little bit there, but the overall thing, I never would have done that hike had I not been there for the high point. So that's kind of why I included it. But TAUM SAUK Mountain was great. If you do this high point, I highly encourage you to do the hike to the waterfall. It's only 1.5 miles there, like 3 miles there and back, but it's great. That's why it sits at number 5, TAUM SAUK Mountain in Missouri. Number 4 will be Eagle Mountain in Minnesota. The last high point that I did to this point. Great hike. I really can't get over how much fun I had for this hike. Number 1, at the trailhead, we met up with a dude. We talked about how we're both doing high points, and we just decided to stick together all the way to the summit. His name was Ryan, and I believe he did some high points that I already done after that, too. He went to Tim's Hill. He was on his 23rd for Eagle Mountain, and I hit my 25th. But the high point itself, really cool spot. It's the other high point where you can kind of see Lake Superior. You really have to look far over there. It has to be on a very clear day. And as for us, it was pretty clear, but it was cloudy, which was perfect because it stopped being cloudy by the time we came down. Now, I will say, a lot of people hit this high point on the weekend. We did it on a Saturday, I think. We were the first ones, like one of the first ones there in the morning, so we didn't pass anybody going up. So we had the trail to ourselves. But when we turned around and we headed down, we passed a lot of people coming up. But that didn't take away from my enjoyment because we had already gotten up there and did our thing. But Eagle Mountain was a great place. The area itself, super cool. I actually do want to go back to this one and do it and really check out the shoreline of Lake Superior on the Minnesota side, some of the rocks. We were kind of in a hurry to go do something else afterwards, so we didn't really get to do it, but I definitely want to return and check out the area because it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. So number 4, Eagle Mountain for Minnesota. Number 3 will be BRASSTOWN Ball in Georgia. This was probably the best view I've ever had at a high point. It was a crystal clear day. You could see so far that you could see the skyline of Atlanta, which was 80 miles away. You could barely make it out. And it was 360 views. You could actually see another high point, Clingman's Dome, from that mountain. Another newcomer to the high point, my friend Jenna, we got to go up to that one together, which was a lot of fun. Anytime I get to do it with someone new to come along with me on my journey, it just adds to it, man. It's just so much fun. I really have no complaints about BRASSTOWN Ball. I'm super happy we did it. We did it a weekend after I was supposed to do it, which would turn out to be great because the weekend before was super snowy and cloudy and wouldn't have had nearly as much of a good time. And then the weekend after, I saw a post where it was super cloudy and stormy and everything, and they didn't get the views that we did. So going up to this one, it's a lot of fun. BRASSTOWN Ball in Georgia, very cool area. We went to Helen afterwards, which was just a cool mountain visitor town, you know, tourist town, but it wasn't really that crowded either, so we had a great time. So that's why it sits so high up on the list. Number 3, BRASSTOWN Ball in the state of Georgia. Number 2 on the list will be Mount FRISSELL in Connecticut. This was a lot of fun. I think the reason I enjoyed this high point so much is because there was a lot of rock scrambling involved with it. And the day was crystal clear, it was just beautiful terrain, the weather was perfect, it was nice and windy, and we just had a great time. And it was kind of unique in the sense that we kept crossing over state lines to finally get to the high point. You know, Mount FRISSELL itself is not the high point of Connecticut. The south slope of Mount FRISSELL is the high point in Connecticut. The summit is in Massachusetts. But the whole hike, we're constantly bobbing in and out of Connecticut and Massachusetts, which is really cool. The mountain that you actually had to hike up a mountain first before you even started the trek up to the next to Mount FRISSELL, and I think it was called Round Mountain, which from Mount FRISSELL, you didn't really get that great views, like you were pretty covered up with trees and everything, but Round Mountain, man, you could see pretty far. Unfortunately, I did not go to the tri-point that's just down the trail from Mount FRISSELL, because we had a stack day ahead of us, so we just couldn't make the time happen to go down there and do it. Looking back, I kind of regret not doing it, but there's a good chance that down the road in my life, I'll probably do this one again, and I'll definitely hit the tri-point whenever I return. But Mount FRISSELL, I have zero negative things to say about it. I mean, there's still open up spots where you can get a good view to reward your efforts to hike up, but the rock scrambling is what made this one so much fun. I'm really excited about the future high points that involve some serious rock scrambling, because I had a lot of fun with this one. And this is just a toenail's dip into what, could be in the future. But that leaves the '1 spot, Mount Mansfield in Vermont, which very well may be the best high point I've done so far. There was a lot of emotion into this high point, because when we woke up that morning and we looked up to the mountain, it was covered in clouds. So right off the start, I was bummed. I knew that this hike along the ridgeline of Mount Mansfield was great, but I wanted to see, you want to see the views. I wanted to be rewarded with the views the whole time. And it didn't give us that reward at first, which actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because it added so much character to the hike, getting up there into the clouds, but the clouds were moving so fast. You could see it moving right in front of you. Mount Mansfield was so much fun. There's a decent amount of people on the trail, but not to the point where it bothered me at all. I mean, we would pass the hiker every now and then. Once we got to the summit, that's where everyone was kind of hanging out, so there was quite a few people up there, but it didn't really bother me again. I mean, it's what you want to do when you get there. But man, the terrain, the whole environment of this place, of having it being like a tundra, they force you to stay on a certain path, and they guide it with these, with like little yarn lines. I'm glad they have it like that, because that's what made it so cool. It was unlike anything I've ever hiked before. When I sat down to make this list, the first thing I wrote down was, all right, #1, Mount Mansfield. Just because I knew it was the best one. And I think it is my favorite so far. I keep bouncing back between that one and Oklahoma, Black Mesa. And they both have their pros and cons, but I think overall I had a much better time on Mount Mansfield. If I'm going by my personal enjoyment and my experience, Mount Mansfield is the best high point I've done on both lists so far. I really don't have anything negative to say about this high point. Nothing. I just can't get over how much fun it was. And on our way down, clouds finally lifted off for good, and we had a clear view the whole way down. Across the water to the west, you could see the high point of New York, Mount Marcy, the Adirondacks. Just because I knew it was over there, and I saw that mountain peaking up higher than the rest, so I was like, it's gotta be Mount Marcy. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, so if anyone wants to correct me on that, feel free to do so. Mount Mansfield was the best. Seldom agreed, best hike he's ever done, best hike I've ever done. For sure. I haven't done a better one yet. That's including stuff that wasn't high points. Up until this point, Mount Mansfield is by far the best hike I've done. That's why it easily dominates the list and takes the #1 spot for the high points of 2022. So there's a list, all 13 ranked from last to first, and I'm pretty satisfied with how I did my rankings. I feel like they really showed the videos that I made on each of these. If you watch them all 13, you can really understand why I ranked them in the positions that I did. Overall, I had a better year than last year, for sure. I think a lot of these added just a lot more character to it. Some of the ones from last year still hold a pretty special place here, like Oklahoma or New Jersey, stuff like that. But man, I don't have any complaints. I had a great time doing high points last year. So, now, we talk about the future. What does it look like for this year? This year, I'm really gonna try and round out the East Coast, sub for 2. The central eastern states that I haven't hit yet, like Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Virginia. Those 5, I'm planning on doing a big road trip to hit all 5 of those. I'm planning on doing that sometime later in the year. I'm hoping July, maybe August, sometime to do that trip. Going to some places that I haven't been before. I'm excited. Now, I know I said last year that Guadalupe Peak for Texas was on the list, that I was supposed to do it last year. Stuff came up. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to come to pass. But I can guarantee that this year I will have done Guadalupe Peak in Texas. It is time that I hit the high point in the state of Texas. I have been looking forward to doing this mountain since before I got into doing high pointing. I'm very, very excited about doing it. It's just there's logistics and getting down there, and I know there's the people that want to do it with me, so working all that in together. Right now, I'm shooting for a Guadalupe Peak hike sometime in the fall, probably October or November or something like that. As for some others, I want to see if I can make a trip up to the Dakotas and do a double header, hit South Dakota and North Dakota, because it's both pretty close to each other, like within a couple hours. Especially South Dakota's. Black Elk Peak looks like it's going to be a great hike. I'm trying to get some buddies to go with me on that one, for sure. Another one that I really want to get done this year, badly, is Illinois, Charles Mound. I know that there's specific dates for this one that they only open it up like 4 weekends out of the entire year. So I'm gonna see if I can schedule in a trip to get that one done. I want to get it done, knocked off the list, so that way I don't have to worry about, you know, working in a schedule to go when it's open. And I don't have to worry about it. Once again, it's on private property. These owners have there's no law forcing them to allow us to hit the high point. They're doing it out of their own free will, and that's great. But I'm worried that, you know, maybe someday, you know, someone might come in and change that and deny us access. So I want to get this one done now. By next year, I definitely want to have the East Coast completely done. That way I can completely lock down and focus on these big boys to the west. There we go. There's high points I have looking forward to for me and for videos for the channel. And then that's the list for 2022. I'm really looking forward to 2023. I'm just excited to get back, you know, into the spirit of this, because this is so much fun. Hey, I'm trying to get done with as many as I can while I can do it. So that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll have some other stuff thrown up too. I think I just did a video on my recent trip down to Big Bend National Park. So go check that out if you haven't seen it, if it's something you're into. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll check back in on the next video.